Bonjour, good evening. Tonight, I am going to just do a little video to teach you guys about indirect objects in French. And I apologize if you hear children screaming. My kids are downstairs having a blast. Okay, so indirect objects in French. We are going to learn how to use indirect object pronouns to make a sentence more specific. So your indirect object pronouns in French are moi, tu, nous, vous, lui, and leur. So first of all, we need to talk about what is an indirect object. So an indirect object, we use them in English and in French, answers the question to whom or for whom. So a good example is Johnny gave the flowers to Martha. Who did he give the flowers to? To Martha. So just to kind of rack your brain in English here, we have a couple examples. So we're looking for to whom or for whom. So in the first one, Mr. Smith called my mom last night. So ask yourself, to whom did he call? So your indirect object would be my mom. Okay. The second one, we gave the new car to my grandma. Who did we give the car to? My grandma. Okay, so that is an indirect object. We cleaned the house for my mom. For whom did we clean the house? My mom. So those are some pretty simple sentences. Pretty much what you're going to see is also going to be pretty simple, even in French. So now that we kind of have reviewed a little bit in English what an indirect object is, we're going to switch to French. So the first thing we need to talk about is why on earth do we need these? Why is this important? The real reason is because no one uses proper nouns 100% of the time. If you think about in a day how many times you say it, her, him, you all in a sentence, that is what we are going to learn how to do, is to use those in French. So we use those a lot in sentences every single day. An example of a sentence without indirect object pronouns, I saw Karen and Carol at the movies. And then with an indirect object pronoun, I saw them. So if you think about a conversation you're going to have with someone and you're talking about a certain person, you're not always going to say that person. So, like, for example, you probably wouldn't say, I saw Karen and Carol at the movies last night. Karen and Carol were sitting up front. Karen and Carol had popcorn. Karen and Carol laughed out loud. So you probably wouldn't say Carol and Carol every single time that you referred to them. You would say them or they. So I saw Karen and Carol at the movies. I saw them at the movies. They sat up front. They laughed out loud. They ate popcorn. I said hi to them. So that is an example of why these are important. Just to be able to use them, it makes your fluency a little bit better. It makes you able to understand conversation a little bit more, especially when you're listening to a conversation in which people are talking about someone else or something that's been going on. It's kind of that understood, we all know what we're talking about here type of thing. So these are very frequently used. It's something you're going to hear a lot. So what we're going to focus on is identifying the indirect object and then changing it to an indirect object pronoun. So there are basically 3 steps for this. The first thing is to identify it. So we need to find it in our sentence. The second step is going to be to change it. So we need to change it to its indirect object pronoun. And then we need to move it. So in the sentence in French, it's going to move to a specific location. So basically, you're going to find it, change it, move it. Those are the 3 steps. So we're going to walk through the 3 steps. The first one, you're going to identify the indirect object. So, Jean-Luc parle à nous. So you have to ask yourself the question, who is Jean-Luc talking to? And in French, they're really easy to identify because of this, okay? So that a is almost always going to come in front of an indirect object. So à nous is my indirect object. So once I have identified it, I have found it in my sentence, then I am going to figure out what I need to change it to. So here we have à moi is going to change to me, à toi changes to te, à nous changes to nous, and à vous changes to vous. Now, we also have lui and leur. So I am going to add those on here real quick. so that you can see. So for the pronoun Louis, you use Louis when you have one person. So if it is a plus one person, and then if you have, sorry, bear with me, I'm gonna make this a little bit bigger. If you have a plus people, so more than one person, it's going to be leur. So you're going to then decide how you're going to change it. So in this example, je ne parle à nous, that is going to change to nous. So just looking at your chart here, that changes to nous. So now I have found it, I have changed it. So what I typically do when I do these is I will underline what I am changing and then write above it. So I would write new, N-O-U-S, just above this so that I'm aware when I'm rewriting my sentence what I'm changing that to. So the next step is the hardest step, but it's still not too difficult. You're going to move it. So Jean-Luc nous parle. So the rules for moving it are that it's going to go before the verb. So you can see here I put my nous before parle. And when you have more than one verb, it's going to move to the closest verb. So if you have je vais parler, you've got a future proche, or if you've got a compound sentence with multiple verbs in it, it's always going to move to the closest verb. So that will probably not so much for you guys. I don't think you're going to see a lot of compound, complex sentences, but just a rule to keep in mind as you go. And then if you have passé composé or any other compound tense, you're going to move it before avoir or être. So you will see some of those, so make sure that you pay attention to that rule so that you put it in the right spot. Okay, so we are going to go through some examples, and I have some examples of easy verbs, some examples of passé composé. We've got a little bit of everything here. So here's an example. What I would encourage you to do is kind of follow along with me as I go through this and help you see how to do it. And then as we move through the next examples, you might pause the video and do it and then listen to me talk through it to make sure that way you are on the right page. So, Marie aime parler à moi. So, I'm looking for my indirect object. I see my a and my moi. So, I know that that's going to be an indirect object. I'm going to underline it. Then I'm going to look back at my chart to see à moi is going to change to me, okay? So let's see if I can add in a little text box here for you guys. So I would write above it, I'm going to change it to me. Then I need to decide where I'm going to put the me. So it's going to go before my verb, before my closest verb. So if I look at this sentence, Marie aime parler, I have two verbs there. So it needs to go before my closest verb. So which verb is my closest? You have to decide. My closest verb is parler. So it's going to go right here. So when I rewrite this sentence, using an indirect object pronoun, I'm going to have Marie aime me parler. Okay? So that instead of saying Marie is talking to me, it essentially says the same thing here, but that is just how they make their sentences a little bit easier to navigate. Okay, we're going to move on to the next one. So like I said, if you want to pause it, see if you can figure it out, I would suggest doing that and then coming back to the video and checking your answer with me. So, hier soir, j'ai envoyé une lettre à vous. So last night, I sent a letter to you or to you all. So looking at my sentence, it's pretty easy to identify that à vous is going to be my indirect object. And I'm going to change that to vous. So mentally in my head, we can do a little text box here, right above here. If I was doing a worksheet or I was doing this on the board in front of you, I would be doing these steps. So à vous, and then I need to decide where it goes. So I just start looking backwards. Find a verb. The word lettre is not a verb. Une is not a verb. Envoyer, oh, that's a verb, yeah. And then when I see AI, that tells me that verb right here, j'ai envoyé, is past tense. It is passé composé. So thinking about my rules, when I have passé composé, I have to place that object pronoun before my avoir or my être. So when I rewrite this sentence, hier soir, je vous ai envoyé une lettre. So that would be how I would rewrite my sentence. It is super important that you get this in the right spot, and also that you delete whatever you have underlined. So I am not writing this. I am moving that, I'm replacing it and getting rid of it. So that is a frequent mistake I'll see, is people will leave this on the end of the sentence, and there's no need to do that. Okay, let's look at the next example. So once again, maybe pause the video, see if you can figure it out yourself, and then come back and listen to the explanation. So, ils vont poser des questions à nous. So they are going to ask us questions. So looking at my sentence, once again, pretty easy to pick out that à nous is my indirect object. Then I need to decide what I'm going to change that to. So I am going to change the à nous to nous. And once again, where am I getting that? I'm looking back at that chart here on slide 7. So I'm looking at this right here. À nous changes to nous. That's how I'm figuring these out. Okay, so then I have to decide where I'm going to put it. So I just simply start working backwards. Questions is not a verb. Lay is not a verb. Oh, wait, pose is a verb, okay? And vont is a verb. So my rule is that it goes before my closest verb. So I am going to be placing nous right here between vont and poser. So when I rewrite this sentence, ils vont, let's underline that. Ils vont nous poser les questions. So that is going to be my rewritten sentence using an indirect object pronoun. Okay, we've got 3 more examples here, so moving on to the next one. Once again, pause the video if you need to, see if you can figure it out on your own, then come back and check your answer. So I look at my sentence, pretty easy to identify that my indirect object is à toi. Now I need to think about what I'm going to change that to. So put a little text box here. It's going to change to te. Then I need to think about placement. So working backwards. Cadeau means gift. That is not a verb. Le is not a verb. Donne is a verb. Okay, and then I have my subject. So pretty easy to tell that it's going to go right here before my verb. So when I rewrite the sentence, je te donne le cadeau. Et voilà. Okay, 2 more. This one we have passé composé. So looking at my sentence, we've got, once again, à moi. That is going to change to me, M-E. And then I have to think about placement. So, working my way backwards. Les blagues is how you say jokes. Fait is a past participle with avis. So, because I have passé composé, I have to place my me right here before my avis. So, when I go to rewrite this sentence, it's going to be vous m'avez fait les blagues. So notice right here that I have done a contraction because I have ME and an A. So vous m'avez fait les blagues. Okay, we have one more. So looking at this sentence, I see to marry. So that is my indirect object. I need to go back to my list and take a little look. I have a plus 1 person. So in the event that I have 1 person, it changes to lui. It does not matter if that person is masculine, feminine. All that matters is that it's 1 person. The same goes down here for people. Okay, there's leur is the same whether it's a group of boys, a group of girls, or a mixed group. Also, I want to point out to you, like, anything that's living really could use this. Like if I say I'm giving it to my dog, I will still use lui. Like, je lui donne des biscuits. Like, I'm giving them biscuits. So that can be anything. It's not just specifically a person. It needs to be something that's living and breathing, though. So you wouldn't give it to Paris, like the city. So you got to watch out for those. Make sure that that is a person. So looking back at my example, j'ai donné la lettre à Marie. So I have decided here that à Marie is going to change to lui. And then I'm going to place it before my verb. So I just work backwards. La lettre, donner, and j'ai. So there I have a passé composé. So in my rules, it's going to go before my avoir. But look here, I've got the J apostrophe. So you got to think a little bit about how you would approach this. You're going to actually pull that je back out. Je lui ai donné la lettre. So pretty easy. I hope so. I hope these examples help. Check out some other examples if you need some. Don't forget, please, 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 please reach out to me if you need some more practice. If you want to do some face-to-face practice via Zoom, we can certainly set that up and then continue working on those supersites.